To get promoted, I needed to travel from our head office in Reading to a management course in Manchester. I was about to be promoted to deputy HR manager, and for this, I needed training in how to have difficult conversations. The course I was enrolled in lasted 2 weeks and was devoted to the intricacies of personnel management. The reputation of the HR department in our company was, to put it mildly, not the best, and in truth, in most cases, it was deserved. I worked with a bunch of arrogant assholes who looked down on the rest of the company as a hindrance to business. But these are the same people who created products, brought profit, and provided us with salaries. I was hoping to change this situation, and this course was going to help me. The current deputy manager was about to be transferred to another position, since the head of the HR department believed that this negative attitude was coming from her. Dave Harris, Deputy Human Resources Manager, sounded great. I hope that in a couple of years, it will be possible to remove the word deputy. We found out about the course 4 weeks before it started. It was planned to last 2 weeks, and since classes ended late on the first Friday, and on Monday everything started as early as 8 a.m., we decided that I would stay in Manchester for the weekend. I asked my wife, Carrie, to come see me. She didn't work on Friday afternoon, could take Friday morning off, and could easily get to me. Perhaps she could even get time off on Monday. We've done this before. She was initially quite interested when I suggested it, but a couple of weeks before the course, she informed me that something had changed at work, and she was insistent that she would not be able to come. This was another detail that had been bothering me the last couple of weeks. We discussed the possibility of having a child, and, to tell the truth, we were doing it with enviable enthusiasm, like rabbits. It was amazing. We even had a whole ceremony when we threw away her pills. This happened just 2 weeks before the course. But about 2 weeks before the start of training, her attitude changed. She became indecisive, and our sex life almost disappeared. I started talking about it, saying that I wanted to try to conceive a child before I left. She looked a little reluctant. Something was wrong. She hesitated, and this is not a topic on which it is appropriate to hesitate. I suggested we put off planning for a baby until I got a new job, but then I said she would need to go back to taking the pill and I would need to use condoms. I wouldn't be too happy about that. We talked for a long time over the weekend, and she seemed to change her mind again. We returned to our sexual routine at home, in the garden, and once even in the car during lunch break. But something still bothered me. My thoughts were either about work or sex. When the course started on Monday, Marjorie, our instructor, informed us that there would be no class on Friday due to unscheduled electrical repairs in the building. She apologized for not warning us earlier, explaining that this had only become known the night before. We had to stay late on other days to make up for lost time. For me, this was not a problem, since there were no other things to do. I decided to surprise my beloved and go home for the weekend. It was about a 4-hour drive home. If I leave at 3 in the morning, I'll probably be home by 7, and maybe I can talk her into taking a day off or pretending to be sick. She'll still be in bed when I arrive, and we can continue with our childbearing plans. By leaving so early, I hoped to avoid traffic jams. I knew that road repairs were planned at night, but most likely I would have time to get there after they were finished. I was driving along the highway on Friday morning and remembering how we met 9 years ago. We were married for 7 years. She was at a hen party in Blackpool at the time. Me and my friends also came there for a bachelor party. Most of the guys were hoping to meet the girls from the bachelorette party. We were all free then, except the groom. I was best man at the wedding of my best friend Gerald and his fiancée Lisa. My job was to make sure that no one sent Gerald on a train all the way to John O'Groats or some other distant place without money in his pocket, and also that he didn't do anything that might upset Lisa. This was the hardest part. Sometimes I even doubted whether the wedding would take place. Gerald was also a womanizer and sometimes walked on the edge. I think he was even attracted to married women. Sometimes he would be late or not show up for a meeting, and then he would tell me excuses about the car breaking down or something like that. But as I suspected, it was the women. I told him that he was playing with fire by getting involved with married ladies, and one day he might run into an aggressive husband. He just laughed and said that he could run fast. I noticed that sometimes he would have to run not only fast, but also far, but this also made him laugh. Jerry and I were as different as chalk and cheese. He was practical and athletic, and I was academic. He would come to my house to fix things, and I would help him with taxes and paperwork. But we had two common passions, cricket and beer. He was playing cricket, and I was watching. He tried to teach me how to play, but I was completely useless. I couldn't throw the ball straight. It was going everywhere but where it needed to go. I didn't know how to hit the ball. Either the ball hit the wickets more often than I hit the ball. Jerry said I had absolutely no hand-eye coordination, and he was probably right. Sometimes we played golf, at least the ball didn't move. But I still walked more than I played. We both realized at an early age that we liked dark British beers. I still remember the hangover from my 17th birthday. Some European lagers also found our approval. As we grew older, we often spent Sunday evenings at the local cricket club, discussing live matches over beers. This was the place where Jerry did not flirt with the wives and daughters of club members. I think this was his safety island. Jerry loved cars, especially big American ones. Sometimes I thought he used his luxury cars to charm girls before he met Lisa. But here we are in Blackpool, celebrating his last days of freedom before his wedding. I was able to make sure that Jerry didn't do anything that could jeopardize the wedding. Lisa would never forgive him if he violated their agreement as a couple preparing for marriage. When Jerry met Lisa and proposed to her, his wild lifestyle noticeably diminished. At the bachelor party, I managed to keep Jerry out of trouble, and we had a good time. We had too much to drink. To be honest, I got him so drunk that I had to put him to bed before his wandering eyes caused problems. I drank moderately myself to keep an eye on Jerry and the other guys, although I also had a few beers and a couple of drinks, especially after I put the groom to bed. Some of our guys seemed to have finally found some company for the evening. The next morning, I went down for breakfast to the small guest house where we were staying. I hadn't spent much time there when an attractive girl came into the room and sat down at the table next to me. That morning, there were only the two of us at the tables. She looked a little shabby, but of course I wouldn't tell her that. I looked at her and asked, "Did you have fun last night?" "Yes, you can say that. Bachelorette party," she answered, looking at me. "What about you?" "Okay, bachelor party. We managed to save the groom from trouble. I'm the best man. Did everything go smoothly for you?" "Chief bridesmaid. I think I've managed to keep most of the girls from losing their underwear, well, the married ones and the soon-to-be married ones. I'm not sure about singles, but that's their business. Listen, instead of talking across the room, why don't you move to my table?" We introduced ourselves, and she said her name was Carrie. I did just that. We discussed our friends' upcoming weddings. It turned out that we both come from the same region. I'm from Basingstoke, and she's from a little village near Andover called Anna Valley. We found other similarities. The weddings were scheduled for one day, the following Saturday. Mine started at 10 a.m. and ended early as I had to take the newlyweds to Southampton where they were boarding the cruise ship for their honeymoon. Her wedding began at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the reception took place at a hotel near Andover. She joked that I could hang out with the main bridesmaid. I explained that the main bridesmaid was my sister, so that was definitely out of the question. I jokingly asked if she was planning something with the best man. She replied that she couldn't stand him. According to her, he was a disgusting, talkative idiot. After a cup of coffee, orange juice, and poached eggs on toast, I felt better. The morning was clearly starting to get better. We chatted for quite a long time until other participants from yesterday's festivities began to arrive. Most looked unwell. I told her about me and Jerry, and she told me that I met my fiancé in college, and she asked her to be the main girlfriend because she didn't trust her friends from her hometown. She knew little of the bride's family other than her parents, whom she had met several times. "To be honest, I've talked to you more than most of her relatives," she said. "Maybe you can stop for a drink on the way back from Southampton. You'll have to drive past us anyway. She admitted that it might help her stay away from the disgusting idiot. I suspected that the geography of southern England was letting her down a bit. But this was not an offer I could refuse. It's not far, and Carrie turned out to be witty, smart, beautiful, and fun to be with. Who knows what could come of this? We exchanged phone numbers, and I said that I would think about it, depending on the traffic situation. By that time, people began to appear, and it became obvious that some people had made romantic acquaintances after all. And then Jerry came in. I looked at him sternly, and he understood everything, staying away, but gave me a thumbs up, apparently deciding that I had succeeded in something after I put him to bed. Over the course of the week, Carrie and I called several times to discuss how the wedding preparations were going. For me, everything was simple. Lisa's mother dealt with most of the organizational issues, but things weren't going so smoothly for Carrie. It turned out that one of the married girls was having an affair, and her husband found out about it. This led to a lot of problems, and Carrie tried to keep it all under control so as not to ruin the wedding. As it turned out, that same girl turned out to be the bride's sister. "I really need to see a friend next Saturday if you're free," she said. Suddenly, I became her friend, and I loved it. Before leaving Southampton, I texted her that I would probably be driving past Andover for about 5 hours, and suggested she call if she still wanted me to stop by. I received a response almost instantly, but was unable to read it because I was driving. A couple of minutes later, I got a call. It was Carrie. She apologized for sending the message because she immediately realized that I was driving. She said she would be glad to see me. She had already asked the mother of the bride, and she was not against my arrival. But she had to quickly end the conversation, since she made a call while she went to the toilet. When I arrived, the official part of the reception had already ended and the party had begun. I quickly found Carrie. She took me firmly by the arm and kissed my cheek. I immediately noticed that nasty guy. It was hard not to notice him. I also saw a couple sitting in the corner who were clearly avoiding conversation, creating an icy atmosphere around them. I recognized the woman from the boarding house, and it seemed she was the one who behaved inappropriately in Blackpool. Carrie and I discussed this situation a bit. I said I don't understand infidelity. If you love someone, you must be faithful. She agreed. I wasn't drinking, and at about 10 o'clock in the evening, I said it was time for me to get going so I could get home at a reasonable time. Carrie took my hand and said, "I have a room here." I didn't know what to answer, but she continued, "This is a double room and will remain so." She looked at me carefully and added, "This is the first date." I nodded, hoping she would change her mind, but was happy to just spend time with her. "You can stay, have a beer, and dance a little more," she suggested. It was an offer I couldn't refuse. It was clear from her tone that no pranks were expected that night. This suited me, since we had known each other for only a short time. We drank a couple of glasses and danced a lot. During the slow dance, she hugged me. We were almost the last to leave. At night, we actually slept in separate beds. There was a bit of a mix-up in the bathroom when we were both changing for bed. I was left in my shorts, and she was in her bra and panties. I hurriedly climbed into bed when I saw her dressed like that. It could have been awkward. Early in the morning, I felt Carrie climb into my bed. It wasn't on purpose. It was just natural and comfortable. She softly turned to face me, kissed me on the lips, and said, "Not yet." My hand slid onto her back. I asked if this was normal. She nodded, smiled, kissed me again, and closed her eyes. She ignored my obvious excitement. At breakfast, we were given knowing looks, which we studiously ignored. We agreed to meet the following weekend somewhere between Basingstoke and Andover. We met at a country pub and had dinner. Before I knew it, the last orders had already been announced, and it was time to leave. I suggested that next time she come to me, and then we could meet at her place. These halfway meetings felt awkward. She agreed, but insisted that her house be first. The following Saturday, I went to her small cottage that she was renting. She cooked dinner, and after that we just sat in front of the fireplace, watching something on TV. It was so cozy. In the middle of the evening, she slid towards me and leaned on me. Everything was so natural. When it got dark, I had to leave. She came out to walk me to the car. We kissed tenderly. I carefully ran my hand over her face. We agreed to meet next weekend at my place. When she arrived, she looked amazing. I couldn't believe that I was dating such a beautiful, smart, and intelligent girl. I lived in a small flat on the outskirts of Basingstoke and got it in perfect order before her visit. She arrived with a small bag. This time I was cooking dinner. It turned out well. I noticed that she had drunk more than one glass of wine. I didn't have a fireplace, just a TV it had to do. We watched some movie that I didn't even remember. As soon as we sat down, she moved closer to me and asked, "Do you mind if I stay the night?" My heart jumped, even though all her hints said she wanted to go slow, and I was fine with that. I said I only have one bedroom, but I could sleep on the couch. In my heart, I hoped that we would both sleep in my bed. I didn't sleep on the couch. The first night was timid but tender. We made love, overcoming the initial awkwardness. After that, everything began to develop rapidly. We were both brave and open. We discovered a lot of new things for each other, and not only in the bedroom, on the sofa, on the beach, in the sea in Mallorca. The latter turned out to be a little tricky. We got married 2 years later. I'm not sure her parents loved me much. I got the impression that they thought that I was not a match for her. But the choice was hers. She moved into my apartment. She was able to commute to Andover from Basingstoke while I continued to work in Reading. Life was going well. After a few years, we were able to afford a small house on the outskirts of Basingstoke. Things settled down. I often met Jerry for a pint or at the cricket club on Sundays. He still helped me fix things around the house, although with the help of YouTube, I started to do it myself. But I still kept his documents. It seemed to me that Jerry had put his adventures behind him and settled down. Although a couple of years ago, he did ask me if I could cover for him if Lisa called and asked if we were playing golf. I replied that I would not do this. If he wants to play, then let it be on his conscience. It was stupid to risk losing his wife and their beautiful 2-year-old daughter if Lisa found out he was cheating. He simply waved it off, saying that everything would be fine. I told Carrie what he was like before he married Lisa and said that I suspected he was having an affair again and suggested that she not cover for him if he asked. I didn't want us to get involved in this. He never asked me to make up an excuse, but about a year ago Lisa called me to see if I had seen Jerry. I said I hadn't seen it, but received a message that he was delayed due to car problems. He explained to me what had happened, but I didn't understand half of what he said. It was just a jumble of words. Anyway, he had a bright yellow Mustang that was only a few years old. It shouldn't have broken. Jerry is a car enthusiast. For me, a car is just a means of transportation. If something breaks, a light comes on the panel, and I take it to the service center. Jerry returned 2 hours later, and I told him that Lisa had called, and I repeated his words to her. He just smiled. Then I remembered how a year ago he wanted me to cover for him. He didn't directly ask, but simply gave me a legend that I would pass on to Lisa. I told him I was angry at him for this and demanded that he not use me like that again. He assured me that this was the first time. He was just unlucky. I replied that I didn't want to know the details. Jerry bought beer for the rest of the day. In the last few weeks before I left, a few things started to bother me. Nothing special, just little things. For example, over the past week, our sex life has suddenly become even more active. I thought it was because I was trying to conceive a child. As I said, Carrie didn't work on Friday afternoons, but twice I came home and noticed that the things she usually did at that time were left undone, and she took it very seriously. This gave us the opportunity to enjoy the weekend without being distracted by household chores. I asked her about it, and she became evasive. This alarmed me. Too many things didn't add up. I started observing her clothes and other signs of cheating, such as being late home and making ridiculous excuses. But there was nothing suspicious, so I decided that I was just being paranoid because I was married to a beautiful woman. I decided that I would come home and just talk to her to calm down. I got there faster than expected, perhaps thanks to the empty roads and a little speeding. Roadworks were still going on the A339 and the bypass on the A34, and the 303 was good for lorries, but I was in a small hire car, some kind of Fiat. But being a local, I knew the shortcuts and went through Kingslayer. As I drove through, I noticed a yellow Mustang that looked like Jerry's car, but he should be at work. He was on night shifts this week. However, there is more than one yellow Mustang, right? I got home a little before 7. I even managed to buy a bouquet of flowers while stopping for gas. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was that Carrie's car was missing. We spoke on the phone last night, and I sent her the usual message, "Good night, love," or "Sleep tight, love." And in the morning, we exchanged something like, "Good morning, sunshine." We always answered each other. Yesterday, I sent her a message at 11 p.m. and received the usual response. She didn't know I was coming back this morning. It was supposed to be a surprise. Instead of a morning text, I wanted to give her a morning kiss and maybe something more since I was away for a week. I entered the house, and it seemed empty. With flowers in my hands, I went upstairs. Our bed was empty. It didn't even look like it had been slept on. Where is she? I had a bad thought. I was tracking Carrie's phone. He was Ian Kingsler. The next step scared me, but I had to do it. Jerry's phone was also in Kingsler, so it was his Mustang parked outside the hotel. My best friend sleeps with my wife. What an idiot I am. I thought a little and sent her a message. "Good morning, dear. Any plans for today?" The answer came quickly. "None, just housework. I miss my wife's beautiful face. Video call. I'm out of shape. You won't like the way I look. I love you. You are always beautiful to me. Come on, what are you trying to hide? It's okay, give me a couple of seconds." The next thing I saw was her face on the phone screen. Just my face, which was good because I was holding the phone close to me and she couldn't see where I was. "I don't know, dear. You look good, rested. Where are you?" "In bed, of course. Where else?" I laughed. "In whose bed?" She giggled. "In ours, of course." "You may be in bed, but it's not ours," I said, moving the phone away so that the camera showed our empty bed behind me. There were indistinct sounds on the other end of the line, and she dropped the phone. I couldn't see everything clearly, but the room resembled a hotel room. The hand then lifted the phone and turned it off. At that moment, I managed to see part of Gerald's face before the connection was cut off. Although it was still early, my next call was to Lisa. I knew she was already awake, getting their little daughter ready for school. I asked her where Gerald was. She said he was at work. I purposely called him Gerald and not Jerry. She clarified that he was working the night shift this week. Sometimes he did this, and she would expect him home in a couple of hours. She knew I was away and asked why I was interested. I said I came home to surprise Carrie. I asked her to track Gerald's phone. She asked to wait a minute. Her voice sounded worried. I mentioned that I didn't think Gerald was at work right now. I heard her curse something like, "I'll kill that bastard this time." She asked if she could talk to Carrie. I said she's not here. The last thing I heard was "bastard," and then she hung up. He never seemed to be able to change. I went to the kitchen, made myself some coffee, and waited for this hurricane to hit. I wonder what excuses she'll come up with. While I was drinking coffee, I took out my laptop and looked at how divorces were processed. Everything turned out to be quite simple. If you choose irreconcilable differences, everything went smoothly. But this seemed too easy an option for those who cheated in marriage. It will take longer, probably cost more, and it won't change the outcome. But I was thinking about filing for divorce on the grounds of adultery. It might make me look like a weakling or a cuckold, but at least it was honest. I wanted people to know the real reason and not just think we weren't compatible. Less than an hour later, she returned home. She flew into the house, looking terrible. Looks like she cried all the way home. She stopped in front of me. I pointed to the chair. She sat down opposite me at the kitchen table. Looking at her, I asked, "Why?" "It just happened. It didn't mean anything. It was a stupid mistake." Tears streamed down her face. You still haven't answered the question. And this is nonsense. You don't just get in your car, drive an hour to a hotel, and spend the night with my ex-best friend. This requires planning. She continued, I'm sorry, I love you. It was a stupid mistake. I won't do that again. This was supposed to be the last meeting. This almost answered one of my next questions, but raised others. How long does this last? About 4 weeks. We only met 3 times. This was supposed to be the last meeting. Sorry, honey, it just happened. You still haven't answered my question. Why? Tell me what just happened. She tried to gather her thoughts, as if an explanation could make me forgive her. There was no chance. Remember that party you couldn't go to a month ago because of work, and I went with Gerald and Lisa. So Lisa had to leave early because their daughter was sick, and I stayed with Gerald. Well, one thing led to another, and when he brought me home, we ended up in the back seat of his car. I was drunk. I'm sorry, dear. He took a video of us together and is blackmailing me, demanding that I continue. But that was it. That would be the last thing, because we were going to have a baby. I wanted to start blackmailing him back. She lowered her head, looking at her knees. I was furious. I would never forgive even once, but you did it 2 more times. A drunken excuse for the first time is pathetic, but there is no excuse for the second and third. So no, there will be no forgiveness. Go upstairs and pack your things. I will file for divorce on the grounds of adultery. I know it's not a big deal. Yes, this will show what an idiot I was for allowing my wife to sneak around behind my back. But it will also show who is to blame. I can live with this. Where should I go? I don't care. To your parents? You can't go to Lisa because I already told her what Gerald did last night, so don't count on her help. I can't go to my mom and dad. They only have a 1-room bungalow. It's not my problem, I replied. To be honest, I would even enjoy showing her parents what a cheater she turned out to be. Crying, she went downstairs with her suitcase and walked out the door. A little later, I heard her car drive away. I didn't like her parents, and I'm sure it was mutual. They believed that she had married below her level. They were quite wealthy. When Carrie moved out, they sold the big house and moved into a smaller one. They now spent a lot of time cruising or traveling around Europe in their large motorhome. Yes, they had a 1-room bungalow, but there was enough space there. But again, that's not my problem. After about an hour, my phone started literally going crazy. I answered Lisa's call, but ignored the others. While she was taking their daughter to school, Gerald returned home, took many of his things, and left. I figured it wouldn't be hard to find with a bright yellow Mustang like that. She said he left the car because it was registered to her. It was her car, although she never used it. She also said that their bank account was practically empty. I reminded her to cancel all credit cards. She's already done it. I talked to my parents. He told me what happened. They were upset with me. They liked Carrie and had known Gerald almost as long as I had. They asked how they could help. I thanked him, but said that nothing was needed. After that, I turned off my phone and disconnected my home phone. I decided not to stay at home. I still had my hotel paid for in Manchester. I decided to go there. I thought a little. You had to complete the course to get promoted. I'm sure my situation will add interest to next week's classes, but it was necessary to make sure that Carrie could not return to the house. I went to my local hardware store and bought some simple deadbolts. I installed them on all the exterior doors, 2 for each. It didn't look very pretty, but it worked. Then it dawned on me, if I close all the bolts, how will I get out? The solution turned out to be simple. I took the ladder and placed it against one of the windows on the 2nd floor. I closed the bolts, climbed out through the window, and slammed it behind me. It wasn't locked, but no one would have guessed it was ajar. I removed the stairs. As I expected, my situation became a good example for discussion in the course. I was able to contact a lawyer and begin divorce proceedings. He noted that divorce due to adultery will not affect the outcome and will cost more. He convinced me that a divorce based on irreconcilable differences would be faster, and it wouldn't stop me from telling everyone why we were getting a divorce. The quick decision seemed right to me. I wanted her to leave. I chose this option. He assumed that we would have to sell the house and my half of the profit would cover the costs of the divorce. I returned home late on Friday evening, got into the house without any problems. Nothing had been touched, but there was a pile of mail at the front door. The only letter I paid attention to was from my lawyer. For the last week, I have kept my phone turned off and communicated only through my home phone. Now I turned it on, called my parents, and told them I was back. We chatted a bit. They asked how I was doing. I told them I had received divorce papers and asked if I could move in with them if necessary. They said they would clear out my old room and I could sleep there until everything was sorted out. I called Lisa to find out what was going on. Nothing good. Gerald ran away, taking most of the money, although there was not much of it anyway. She sold the Mustang, which will help keep her going for a while, but Gerald completely disappeared. I spent Saturday pottering around the house and garden trying to figure out what I needed to do to get the house ready to sell. Ironic, the person who used to do all this for me is now the reason I have to do it myself. Scoundrel. I just finished mowing the lawn. To distract myself, I looked at the even stripes that remained on the grass. They looked good. I looked around, trying to figure out what needed touching up. I could probably handle this. As I went to make myself some coffee, I heard the key turning in the lock. The door opened and Carrie and her parents walked in. I was expecting them. I silently called her mother a battle axe and her father henpecked. We still didn't love each other, and this situation only made everything worse. They either assumed I would be back on Saturday or tracked my phone. It didn't matter. This conversation still needed to be had. It's better now. Henpecked was carrying Carrie's bags. I told you to get out, I said firmly, looking at Carrie. Battle Axe immediately began to attack. This is her house too. She lives here. We couldn't get inside last week. What have you done? I ignored her question. She lost her right to this house when she first slept with my friend, I replied. Judging by their faces, Carrie had not told them the whole truth. I continued. She cheated on me 3 times. At least that's what she admitted, but once would be enough. She needs to clean up. I think it confused them a little. I guess Carrie told them it only happened once, not 3. But the battle axe quickly recovered. She can't leave. You have obligations. She's pregnant. Carrie was crying. So whose child is this? Gerald's or mine? We'll have to wait and find out. In the meantime, she's leaving. I think you'll be going on a cruise soon. Let him live with you and get fat there. Carrie looked at me and whispered. We used condoms. So Gerald just happened to bring condoms with him that first time. This just proves that he planned everything. She began to sob even harder. Well, no, not the first time, but it all happened very quickly. You knew Gerald had the morals of an alley cat, and yet you slept with him unprotected while we were trying to have a baby. And this last trip, it was also planned. Book a hotel away from home, make sure Gerald has the night shift while I'm away so you can get laid. So now you can go to hell. If the child is mine, I will pay child support. If not, go to Gerald and let him pay. By the way, did you hear that he just left, leaving Lisa empty-handed? I don't think her parents have ever heard me say so many curse words in a row. There was one question that I wanted to clarify. I may regret this, but I need to know. Where was this the second time? At our home? In our bed? No, I went to Gerald and Lisa. Lisa was not at home. She was at work. In their bed? She lowered her head and muttered, Yes. Darling, I made a mistake. Please forgive me. I think Gerald set it up. He got me drunk at that party. What I didn't know was that he had videotaped us the first time and used it to blackmail me. He said that Lisa began to suspect him of cheating, but she would never have thought that he would become interested in his best friend's wife. Gerald knew how you felt about cheating, and that if you found out, you would divorce me, even for a single case. Only after the second time did I decide to blackmail him back. I recorded us last night and told him that if he didn't stop, I would tell Lisa everything, and he would lose his wife and family. I was wrong, but I tried to make things right. Can you forgive me? If this is true, Why didn't she just go home after recording the video? She realized what I was thinking and handed me her phone. I didn't take it. Honey, look. I did this morning. Sorry I didn't come home. I was so excited and tired. As soon as she said it, it dawned on her how it sounded. She was tired because she had been having sex all night. Her face darkened, and if the battle axe had not supported her, she would probably have fallen. Henpecked took Carrie's phone and showed me a video of Carrie screaming at Gerald and threatening him. He said the recording was uploaded to the cloud to prevent Gerald from deleting it. It looked convincing, but could have been done after I exposed them. I shook my head. This could have stopped him, but if you had told Lisa, he would probably have done the same thing as he did now. He would have simply run away, leaving Lisa with a child. He has disappeared, and no one knows where he is. Perhaps that was a little unfair. I remembered him saying that he could run fast. Then I told him that he would have to run fast and far. It looks like he did both. You know how I feel about cheating, but I love you. If you had come to me on that very first day, and we had told Lisa together, perhaps we could have worked out something. I don't know because it didn't happen, but now it's over between us. I took the divorce papers and gave them to the henpecked man. They left. With the help of a battle axe and a henpecked woman, she tried to fight the divorce. We did a DNA test as soon as we could. The child turned out to not be mine. Then the battle axe and the henpecked realized that there was no turning back. They stopped pestering me and she signed the documents. They bought my share in the house. Carrie and the baby needed somewhere to live. This was fine with me, although it would probably put a damper on their travel plans for the foreseeable future. After the last match of the season, when the visiting team left, someone found the clock in the locker room. We called their club and agreed to send them back. Then the idea occurred to me how I could find Gerald. On Monday morning, I called the England and Wales cricket board. I said that a man named Gerald Jones had left something and asked if they had his address so I could send it. They said they had his details, but could not release the information. If I send them an item, they will give it to Gerald. The tracker I included in a small box was inexpensive and lasted a month on one battery. I don't know if Gerald recognized the small electronic device. He was more of a mechanical man. That's how I found it. It was north of Huddersfield. I looked at what cricket clubs there were in the area. It turned out there was only one, and I knew where he would be on Sunday afternoon. I called the cricket club and confirmed that he was there, but they also didn't want to give me his address. I had a plan. I knew him for many years and became well acquainted with his habits. It was a cold, wet and windy winter Sunday when I caught the early train to London and then to Huddersfield. Like everyone else, I bundled up to keep warm and dry. The journey took several hours, but once I reached Huddersfield, I headed towards the cricket club. It was still raining and it was cold. There was a large American car parked in the parking lot. Not as new and flashy as the Mustang. I wanted to check something. I raised the wheel arch and the alarm went off. Gerald ran outside to turn it off. At that moment, I realized that I had caught him. I had to do this a few more times before it stopped setting off the alarm again. Now it was the turn of the small axe that I brought with me. I broke through all the panels with an axe. I punctured the tires and smashed the aluminum wheels. They became useless. I assume at this time they were all watching the highlights of the England versus New Zealand match. I recorded the program at home. I disappeared into the shadows and waited. The rain continued and my raincoat began to leak water. I saw him leaving the club with a few other people, all heading in the same direction. I followed them. In the end, Gerald was left alone. He swayed a little, as usual, when he left the club at home. I knew he wouldn't drive his car. He didn't want to lose his driver's license and be unable to drive his big cars. Unfortunately, he fell in a dark place on his way home. I took revenge on him. The phone rang. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I looked at the screen. It was Lisa's number. Damn, what else happened? She couldn't contain her emotions. I got him, that bastard. I'm still listed as his next of kin. Looks like he was beaten up somewhere in Leeds or the north. And my number is still listed as an emergency number on his phone. Police. Didn't say anything, but hinted that it could be some husband of someone's wife with whom he was having an affair. They asked if I knew anyone who could do such a thing. I said that. No, because before they called, no one knew where he was. It wasn't you, Dave? I just muttered, I'll drop by to see you in the morning. She caught him, and social services will squeeze everything out of him. I didn't want to ruin her joy, but I'm sure he'll try to escape again. But now he won't be able to run fast or far. I'm sure of this, and I need to remember to tell Carrie where he was. What about me? Well, I've been waiting for the next cricket season and a couple of pints of Doom Bar. Shelley. A couple in their 40s followed my wife and her pre-lover boyfriend to a hotel. I was lucky. I followed them. I found myself out of sight of my wife and her boyfriend. I remembered what the receptionist told me when I was chatting with her earlier. My wife, Shelley, and her would-be lover, Harold, each carried a small bag, and he put his arm around her waist. They were dressed smartly, trying to look like a married couple, although she clearly wanted to distance herself from him. Shelley seemed to be looking at the large mirror behind the reception desk. However, the couple behind them was different. The man was carrying a large suitcase and an armful of cases with clothes. The woman was holding a small travel bag. They were dressed in comfortable travel clothes, but had enough with them for a great weekend. It was a married couple. I was able to take a few photos of my wife and Harold in the mirror. I watched as Harold went through the registration process. The receptionist looked at me, I nodded, she smiled back. She seemed to enjoy it. I could barely see what was happening. I heard someone swearing. I saw Shelley pull away from Harold and turn her back to him. The receptionist said something to her that made her stop and handed my wife the envelope I had given her in advance. After a while, the couple in front of me exchanged glances, and some unspoken communication slipped between them. The man snorted loudly. Then everything began to unfold. My wife rushed out the door, dragging her small suitcase behind her. The receptionist handed the other envelope to Harold. With that, I turned around and headed towards the exit. Now I'll tell you how we got to this point and what happened next. It all started with my wife Shelley's office Christmas party. We were there with her friend Dee and her husband Frank. I didn't particularly like Dee, but Frank was okay. We talked sometimes, he seemed normal, but we had nothing in common. He played golf and cricket, and my interests were old cars, renovations, and gardening. Dee and Shelley had known each other since high school. They managed to get a job in one bank, but in the commercial department, not in the retail department. Frank and I were walking back with our drinks, and I arrived just in time to hear Shelley say, "I'd love to have his slippers by my bed." I looked across the room and saw that they were looking at Harold Galt. He started working at the bank a couple of months ago. Initially, that was all the girls could talk about. He was certainly handsome, just over 6 feet, about 12 stone 76 kg, with wavy blonde hair neatly styled. He had the appearance of a Greek Adonis. He was talking to the bank's management, looking confident, even though he was at the same level as Shelley and Dee. A young blonde stood next to him. He held her by the waist. I've already talked to him before. He had a certain confidence bordering on self-confidence. Like Frank, he seemed normal, but we had nothing in common. "Then what's wrong with my slippers by your bed?" I asked. Frank added, "And I don't think the blonde he's with now will be happy if his slippers end up by your bed. Who is she?" Dee chimed in, "This is his wife, Mary. They've been married 5 years. They have a little son, Philip. He's 2, I think. She's got a problem." She seemed to know a lot, but did not specify what the problem was. I looked at Shelley with a displeased expression on my face. With a serious tone, he said, "If you want another man's slippers on your bed, divorce me first." With these words, I went to the toilet. I didn't have to go there. I was just showing my displeasure. When I returned, Shelley apologized. "It's just an expression, honey. I would never cheat on you. If I find it or anyone else's slippers next to the bed you were in, I will divorce you." Dee looked at me. "Rob, don't be like that." Shelley looked down. I wouldn't do that, honey. I love you. She took a sip of her drink, then looked down at her lap, feigning remorse. Dee giggled. I'm sure Rob would forgive you for one mistake. I looked at Dee with irritation. She noticed it, and I just said, ugh. Frank told Dee almost the same thing, but her reaction was completely different. She laughed at Frank and said, You wouldn't have fooled me, darling. You love me too much. You'd forgive me for one mistake, wouldn't you? I've never heard Frank swear. Don't even try. You might not like it. A flash crossed Dee's face, then she playfully slapped Frank on the arm and said, I won't, but you still wouldn't divorce me. You love me. I don't know Frank that well, but from his mood, I hope she doesn't make a mistake. That's when I realized why I didn't like Dee. She took everyone, including her husband, who obviously loved her, for granted. This conversation worried me a little. Shelley sometimes followed Dee's lead, not always, but often enough that it bothered me. I told Shelley that I didn't like the way she followed Dee's sometimes dubious advice. I reminded her that she had a mind of her own, but Dee seemed to be able to convince her. I warned her, be yourself. After that, things seemed to calm down a bit, although I noticed that both Dee and Shelley kept sneaking glances at Harold. But there was an expression of obvious lust on Dee's face. She even went up to Harold and asked him to dance when Frank went to the toilet. It looked like Harold had invited Dee, and the dance was slow. Since it was Shelley's company party, I was driving. When my company hosted the event, she was driving. We shared responsibilities equally. We dropped Dee and Frank off at their house and then headed home. The rest of the journey passed in cold and quiet silence. I said in a quiet voice, I think Dee is going to have an affair with Harold. It would be disrespectful to her marriage and Harold's wife. If you help her, I will have serious doubts about our marriage and future because it will be just as disrespectful. She didn't answer me. Over the weekend, the situation improved and the ice melted a little. Shelley had several messages from Dee. She had a special signal for her messages, the same laughing frog. When we went to bed on Saturday night, I rummaged through the bottom of my closet and found an old pair of slippers. I deliberately placed them on her side of the bed. She understood the joke and the hint, laughed, and then we made love. After that, everything returned to normal, but I continued to be on the alert. I watched how she got dressed, what time she returned home. I did what she liked, showing her that I loved her and letting her know what she would lose if she cheated on me or helped someone else cheat. Harold was no longer spoken of. I wasn't really worried that she might cheat on me, but I was worried that she might help Dee cheat on Frank. From time to time, I would subtly remind her what would happen if I found out that she was helping Dee deceive Frank. I've given examples of celebrities getting married and getting divorced without valuing their vows at all. Told her stories I'd heard, some made up, about husbands or wives finding their partners cheating, and told her that if she ever did that, I'd leave. I'll just disappear. One day, I was with my colleagues in a pub that we don't usually visit. One of the guys noticed the barmaid, and we went there. There I saw Dee and Harold. They looked very cozy. When I got home, I told Shelley about it. She immediately said that they were working together. I took a photo, showed it to Shelley. At 10 o'clock in the evening, you don't go to the pub dressed the way Dee was dressed when it comes to work. Shelley immediately responded that they were just friends, almost as if she had her answers prepared in advance. Does Frank know about this friendship, or is he on the weekend playing golf? I knew he often went away on golf weekends. She turned around and went upstairs to bed. I drank another bottle of beer and went after her. As I sat down on my side of the bed, I asked her, Did you know about this meeting, Dee? She answered quietly. She said she might see him this weekend. Does Frank know? Don't know. She rolled over and looked at me. I'm not getting involved in this. I knew that look. I believed her. I lay down in bed, hugged her, smiled widely and kissed her tenderly, then pressed her head to my shoulder. Her favorite place. There was no need to say anything more. A week later, after a long phone call with her mother, Shelley asked if we could visit her parents in a few weeks. They had little things to do. I liked Mavis and David. They were good people, so I didn't mind. On Friday, we went to Gloucester. It was too late to do anything. Shelley and her mother were just chatting, discussing Shelley's old friends, family news, and local gossip. David and I muttered at appropriate moments and drank a couple of beers. The day went well. I got busy with little things I wanted to do for the elderly. They are actually not that old. David is only 65, but the arthritis in his hands is causing him pain. This prevents him from doing small jobs. I was glad to help. In the evening, we went to a restaurant so the old people could have a drink, and I was driving. At the end of dinner, Shelley's phone made the annoying sound of a laughing frog. She didn't even look at him, she just switched it to vibration. This is convenient with texts. You can read them when you have time. The food was great and the company wonderful. On the way back, I could still hear her phone vibrating. We returned home and drank some more. David brought me a couple bottles of crafty old hen, and I drank them. The other three were slightly tipsy when they went upstairs. The evening was a success. Although I thought about the messages from Dee, there were quite a lot of them. We got into bed and Shelley was in a romantic mood. But it seemed strange to me with her parents in the next room, although when we first started dating, this did not stop us, even if they were in the room next to each other and were not sleeping. Around 1 the crafty old hen made itself known, and I went to the toilet. Shelley's phone was on the dressing table, and I heard it vibrate and light up. I shouldn't have, but I looked at him. It was a message from Dee at this time of night. What was she up to? I only saw the preview. Oh my God, it's amazing. You need to try it, even if just once. The preview ended there. I know I shouldn't have, but I took the phone with me to the toilet. We knew each other's passwords. I opened the message folder from Dee. There were only previews, none of them were open, so Shelley couldn't see what was happening. But from what I read, it was obvious. Dee was with Harold for the night, and that meant everything that came with it. I wondered if this weekend was being organized as some sort of spa weekend, and that's what I told Frank. I didn't have his number to confirm anything directly. I didn't open the messages, did my chores in the toilet, and didn't flush so as not to wake Shelley or let her know that I had been looking at her phone. On Sunday, I got up early to finish a few things for David. By 9 in the morning, when everyone came downstairs, I had already prepared tea. Shelley put the phone on the charger, and it lit up. Apparently, she never looked at the messages from Dee, but I couldn't be sure. Dee and Frank must have been busy last night with so many messages you received. Anything interesting? I asked. Before I mentioned it, she seemed to have completely forgotten about the messages. She looked at the phone and quickly went into another room. She seemed to be talking to Dee, but I couldn't understand what they were talking about. When she returned, her face was red. Something happened. We got ready, loaded our things into the car, and headed home. As we took the M5 north, I said to Shelley, "Looks like Dee had a busy weekend." I didn't mention Frank's name, just Dee's. Yeah, I think it went well for them. We barely spoke until we got home. Shelley looked lost in thought. We got off the highway and stopped at a traffic light. This tormented me, and I decided to clarify everything directly, without beating around the bush. I turned to Shelley and said, "If I find out that Dee slept with Harold this weekend, and you helped her by arranging this trip to your parents, I will never forgive you, and I will seriously think about our marriage because I warned you not to." The traffic light switched, and the car behind started honking. The remaining 10 miles to home passed in complete silence. When I stole a glance at her, she was looking down at her hands folded in her lap. Damn, it was her fault. At home, I decided it was time to have a beer, even though it was a little early. Shelley went upstairs, unpacked, and put the dirty clothes in the laundry basket. When she came down, it seemed to me that she was crying. Her eyes were a little red. She suggested going for Chinese food so she wouldn't have to cook dinner. I agreed, having already drunk beer, and let her go. She returned with Chinese food, and at the same time, since the supermarket was nearby, she bought me another crafty old hen. I wondered if she had talked to Dee while she was in the store. I've already prepared the plates and everything. At dinner, she looked depressed. Halfway through the meal, she said, "Honey, I didn't help Dee, but I did tell her that we were going away for the weekend. It wasn't any special trip. I organized it so you could do little things for Dad since he has problems with his hands. I didn't do it so she could go and sleep with Harold, but I think she took the opportunity knowing that you and Frank weren't hooking up. Sorry, honey, I didn't think she'd do that. From the number of messages and conversations on the phone, I now know that she did it. I don't know what to do. Should I tell Frank or stay away? She's my best friend, but she ruined her marriage. You need to think and make a decision so that you can sleep well at night. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did the right thing. And most importantly, so that you can look Frank in the eyes calmly when we meet them again." We watched a little TV. I drank a couple more bottles of beer, and we went to bed. No sex, just cuddling. I'm sure before I fell asleep she whispered, "I'm sorry, darling." On Monday, she returned from work late. Even though she called me to warn me, it still bothered me. At dinner, she said that she had been talking to Dee for a long time. She learned some shocking details, but she was not going to share them with me. This is good. She warned Dee that she wouldn't tell this time, but if she found out again, she wouldn't do that. She also said that if Frank asked her directly, she wouldn't lie. Shelley told Dee that she would not help her cheat on her husband and warned her that if she continued, she would ruin her marriage and Frank would leave. Although Dee laughed at the comment about slippers at the Christmas party, Frank didn't laugh, he was completely serious. Dee replied that it was just one time. It was good, but she won't take any more risks. And if Harold's wife finds out, she will file for divorce. Harold was also not interested in a repeat, since his father-in-law did not trust him, and there was a prenuptial agreement between them. Things calmed down at home for a few months. One afternoon, I went to the local newsstand to pick up a car magazine and went to a cafe to read it away from the noise of the office. There, I saw one of the young guys from our office, Martin, who came in with one of the women from the sales department. She was a little older than him and looked good. Martin himself was an attractive guy, but I always thought he was a little naive. They grabbed their drinks and sat in the booth behind me. I heard her apologize for the weekend mix-up, but her husband became suspicious, and she had to cancel plans for Saturday night. She said she won't be working late anymore for a while. She also told how carefully she had to choose clothes and plan her time with him. She admitted that her husband notices how she dresses for work, and out of guilt, she began having sex with him more often to distract him. However, this did not go well with her husband. Martin was better for her. He satisfied her in a way her husband never could. I ran into Martin when he was alone at the printer, or rather, I deliberately made this happen. I told him what I heard and warned him to be careful, although it was none of my business. He said she told him her husband was abusing her, and she couldn't leave because of the children. After I started the conversation, he started talking about the difficulties they were having to meet and how they were hiding from their husband. He seemed happy to talk. He couldn't discuss it with his colleagues, but once I found out, it didn't matter. I warned him that while the company didn't care if it didn't affect work, if my husband found out, the consequences would be catastrophic. All this gave me a kind of guide to cheating. I started to worry when I saw Shelley's phone. There was a notification from Dee on the screen, but not with that annoying frog sound. Why did she change him? After talking with Martin, I already knew what to look for. I watched her clothes, makeup, everything. Nothing changed, everything was strictly monotonous. Always the same style of skirts, the same blouses, similar shoes. Previously, her style changed with the weather, but now everything remains the same. She never stayed late at work without calling. When she left the office with the girls, she never stayed late and often asked me to pick her up. I used to suggest this, but now she always insisted. This has been going on for the last 5 weeks or so. Something was wrong. However, the sex was good, which also made me anxious, although I didn't really complain. I tried to look at her phone, but she changed the password. I asked her about it, and she said that someone at work saw her enter the old one, so she changed it and forgot to tell me. She immediately gave me a new password. Checking her phone in front of her would be too suspicious. She often left it on charge overnight, so I checked it then. Nothing suspicious. I was alarmed when we went to a summer barbecue that their bank was throwing. Frank was away for the weekend playing golf. That's why Dee spent all her time with us. I decided that we would take a taxi back home and pretended to drink more than usual, spending a lot of time on the toilet. I wanted them to relax and lower their guard. It worked. I went to get some drinks. There was no line at the bar, so I came back faster than before. As I approached, Shelley and Dee moved to a quiet corner of the garden. Why did they do this? Approaching them unnoticed, I heard them looking at Harold and Dee saying, "Listen, everything is thought out. It's flawless. You won't get caught. We organized everything. Clothes, time, and judging by what you told me, everything is fine with sex too. I even signed you up for the symposium. What you if you don't show up? No problem. I'll explain everything. I've organized the trip and booked a room at the hotel where the symposium is taking place in your name if Rob checks. Anyway, it's just once. I'm still not sure. I'll know and Rob will see it. You won't get caught. What's the harm? Just have sex with him more often. Men are simple. I'm still not sure I want to take the risk. Quiet, he'll be back soon. We'll talk about this at work. When I have the actual hotel details, I'll tell you. And remember, nothing electronic. No names were mentioned, and they could be talking about anything, but after what I saw, I assumed that they were talking about a meeting with Harold. All I could do was wait. After the taxi took Dee home, I said to Shelley, "I saw the way you looked at Harold. If I find his slippers by the bed you slept in, I'll leave. Like I said, I'll just disappear." I suddenly didn't look drunk anymore. She looked at me. She understood what I meant. She didn't say anything, just looked out the window. When she came home, talking about what the bank would represent at the symposium, I pretended to be happy for her. When I asked what the symposium was about, she looked a little confused. Banking in the 2030s. It sounded like a fantasy, but I still pretended to be happy in case I was wrong and nothing happened. I checked. There really was a symposium, and it was held at the hotel she was talking about. So why was she nervous? The symposium was on a Friday, but to avoid the long commute in the morning, she planned to go there on Thursday afternoon and stay at a hotel. At least that was the plan. Given the Friday morning traffic, it made sense. But I thought the hotel room would remain unoccupied while Shelley met Harold elsewhere. Making an appointment with him at the same hotel where there were a lot of bank employees would be stupid, and he and Dee weren't stupid. We rarely spent time apart, so I offered to go with her and stay at a hotel for the weekend. We've done this before. She immediately became nervous and said that she would be tired after the symposium and would want to go home to be with her husband in her own bed. The hotel where the meeting was to take place couldn't be too far away because Shelley still needed to be at the symposium by 8 in the morning if she was going to go there at all. So I started looking for suitable hotels near the symposium venue. Crap, there were a lot of them. I still wasn't sure that this was really a meeting, and I decided that Shelley should make the decision herself whether to destroy our marriage or not. She's had enough warnings. I loved her and wanted to give her one last chance and then see how she was going to rebuild trust. It seemed to me that Dee was leading her along, and I had already warned her about this. But a week before the symposium, something happened that further strengthened my suspicions. The bank threw a party at a local bar to celebrate the new contract. I offered to pick them up when they were done, as I usually do. It would be strange if they refused. They tried, but not too persistently. I insisted. I arrived early and stood quietly in the corner. Music was playing and someone was dancing. I saw Harold ask Shelley to dance and then, about halfway through the song, take her to a corner where she seemed to stagger. I took out my phone. He looked around. No one seemed to be paying attention to them, except that Dee was watching, but only she. And so I saw it. Harold allowed himself intimacy with Shelley. I expected her to push him away or slap him, but nothing happened. I took a photo. Then they kissed. It wasn't a passionate kiss, just a touch of lips. I filmed this too. The music stopped and Harold and Shelley returned to the others. As soon as they sat down at the table, I approached. Shelley was clearly drunk. She does not tolerate alcohol well and is usually very cautious. When she saw me, she blushed. I was unhappy with what I saw, but it was not enough for a divorce. We'll have to warn her again about the inadmissibility of cheating in the future. On the way home, I asked if Harold or Dee were going to the symposium. Shelley said she didn't know. We stopped at a traffic light. I looked at her and said, "I can't believe you don't know if any of your colleagues are going to the same symposium. I'll be very unhappy if you're lying to me." The traffic light switched, and I glanced at her again as I drove off. She looked down at her hands in her lap. I said, "You know what I think about those who cheat. If they use the symposium to meet and you cover for them, I will decide that you justify cheating and you can do so yourself. And if you cheat on me, I warn you again. I'll leave. I'll just disappear. You'll never see me again." Now I was sure that something was happening. But how can this be confirmed? I suspected that everything would happen at the symposium. All I had to do was play the role of detective and follow her. Then I got lucky. I stopped checking her phone after I heard from Dee that nothing should be electronic. But one day, as I was passing by, I noticed Shelley's phone screen light up. "Best Western Solihull. Mrs. Jones, your confirmation. Our last name is not Jones, and the hotel where the symposium was held was the Best Western Coventry, not far away." When I checked her phone later, the message was no longer there, not even in the trash. I caught them. Various plans were spinning in my head. I decided to give her one last chance, but in case she chose the wrong one, I visited our lawyer and began preparations. I left with a separation letter as a prelude to divorce. I downloaded a divorce petition template from the internet to use as a shock value. But in my opinion, she would not go all the way. However, I had to take steps to prevent her from giving in to temptation again. But even if she doesn't do this, what should I do? The problem is that I loved her with all my heart, but love has a limit. If she allows someone else to come in and be intimate with her, it will all be over for me. If she doesn't, we could work on rebuilding trust, but it would be an uphill battle and might not be successful. The sex on Wednesday night was amazing, but I still couldn't stop wondering if it was guilt sex. Shelley promised there would be more of this over the weekend. I booked a room at the Solihull Hotel, still hoping nothing would happen. I took the day off and got there early. I had a long conversation with the administrator about cheaters and secret dates. She said that it is always clear which of the visitors is cheating. Married couples don't walk into a hotel holding hands. They are much more practical. Usually the husband carries the luggage and the wife carries a small bag. One of them handles registration. And if they are lovers, they both have small bags and the man always checks in, usually holding her by the waist or by the hand, trying to look like a married couple. When I proposed my idea for Mr. and Mrs. Jones, the administrator thought it was a funny idea and even suggested watching it on security cameras. But it cost me £20. I saw Harold and Shelley arrive and followed them inside. An elderly couple walked between me and them. They walked in exactly as the receptionist had described, looking like they were in love. I took a photo and wondered how long they would keep this look of love. I heard Harold say to the receptionist, "Mr. and Mrs. Jones, we have a reservation." The administrator looked at me. I nodded. "Of course, sir." She leaned over to the computer to do her work. Then she asked him to fill out the car registration form and handed over the key card. I suggested this next point to the administrator in advance, and she thought it would be funny. She looked at my wife standing next to her supposed lover and smiled. Then everything changed. I saw Shelley's body tremble, and she pulled away from Harold. She shook her head. She seemed to be muttering, "No, no, no, I can't." Harold looked at her in bewilderment. The administrator continued as if nothing had happened. "The hotel is not interested in what names you use. However, I believe your real name is Mrs. Shelley Harris." I saw my wife stagger and move away from Harold. The administrator calmly added, "I have an envelope for you." Have a nice day." She smiled and handed over the envelope I gave her. After that, she turned her attention back to the computer. My wife just stood there with an envelope in her hands. The administrator looked up and said, "I would suggest you open this before you go to your room." I didn't ask her to say it, but it was a good idea. Shelley froze in place. Harold took the envelope from her hands and opened it. Crap. He handed the contents to Shelley. She took the documents and looked at the photos of her and Harold kissing. She then unfolded a folded piece of paper that contained unsigned divorce papers and a separation letter. Attached to them was a note. "What you do in the next 30 seconds will determine whether you receive signed divorce papers." I timed it, but it didn't really matter. It was her actions that mattered. The couple behind them chuckled loudly, causing them to move. Shelley turned and ran towards the hotel exit, straight past me. She didn't look back. Harold just stood there, stunned. The administrator handed him an envelope and said, "This is for you, Mr. Galt." The letter read, "Your wife has received copies of photographs and details of your planned night out. Have a nice evening." It was unsigned. I went outside. Shelley dialed a number on her phone. I headed to my Land Rover. My phone rang with her ringtone. She raised her head and saw me. I called out to her, "Do you need a ride somewhere?" She dropped her suitcase and ran towards me. "I'm so sorry." I opened the passenger door. "Sit down." Tears streamed down her face as she climbed inside. I went and picked up her suitcase, putting it in the trunk of the Land Rover. "Sorry, honey, I'm sorry. Dee got me into this." I ignored her. "What kind of car does he have?" "That black Audi over there." She pointed to a black Mercedes parked under the trees. "Are you sure? It's Mercedes." "Yeah, I'm sure. He parked it there so no one would see it." It was a Mercedes-EQ SUV, a 50,000 pounds car. How could he afford such a car on his salary? It's about the same as Shelley's. Maybe his wife had money, or was it an inheritance? Doesn't matter, I had other things to do. I looked at Shelley and said, "Don't you dare call him." She quickly reached into her purse and gave me her phone. Was it because she didn't trust herself? Or did she want to show that she was sorry? I put the phone in my pocket. I had other things to do. I walked to the back of the Land Rover and took out my tools. If you have a Land Rover, you always need tools. I was a little late to send a pre-prepared email from my phone. Then he walked to the back of his car, so that in case the CCTV cameras were working, he would remain out of their view. Not that it bothered me much. For damaging property, I would have been given a probationary period or a fine at most. With my wire cutters, I cut off all the valves on the tires, and the knife made a cut on the sidewall of each one. They were run-flat tires that wouldn't go flat, but the car became unsafe to drive and all the tires now needed to be replaced. The 2-pound hammer then struck the windshield directly in the driver's line of sight. The result exceeded my expectations. The crack went in all directions, and the car alarm went off. I went back to Land Rover. "Can we go home now, please?" "In a while. I'm not done here yet." "Please?" I didn't even answer. At that moment, the hotel doors opened and Harold ran out, dragging his suitcase behind him. His phone was clutched in his shoulder as he tried to turn off the car alarm. I managed to take a photo of him on which the name of the hotel was visible. I sent this photo to his wife. My windows were open and I heard him talking on the phone. "Honey, it's not what you think. I would never cheat on you. I'm just walking into the hotel. You know I'm on the course." He paused. "No, I was just helping her." He got into the car and immediately noticed the condition of the windshield. He left, still talking on the phone. "Honey, it's not me. I didn't do it." Then his phone beeped and he looked at the screen and cursed. Crap. I wonder if it was a photo of him getting intimate with Shelley or a shot of the two of them entering the hotel with his arm around her waist. Although the photo was taken from the back, their faces were visible in the mirror behind the reception desk. or it was an image of him leaving the hotel he had just said he was going to. It doesn't matter, the damage has already been done. It was time to go. I started the car and drove out of the parking lot. Shelley just sat there and cried. She tried to talk to me several times, but couldn't. I heard her whisper, "I'm sorry." Then I noticed how she gathered her courage, turned to me and said, "Honey, can we stop and talk about this?" I wasn't in the mood to talk, but it had to happen. She hasn't noticed where we are yet. Not driving, in the nearest parking lot. And then she looked out the window and realized we were heading south on the M5, not north, home. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To your parents. Please know it will destroy them. You love them, you wouldn't hurt them." I glanced at her and growled. "I didn't do this." She began to sob again. I wasn't going to go to her parents, but she didn't know that. I told her. "Did you think that would be part of the consequences if you took Harold as your lover? We thought it all out so well, I would never have gotten caught. It was only meant to be one time, you would never have known, you wouldn't have been hurt, it was just for the experience." All the excuses and reasons came out of her through her tears. I wondered if Dee had used the same arguments to convince her. Likely. What if Dee was Harold's pimp, finding mistresses for him and organizing everything? This would be an interesting revelation for their bank. It might be worth hinting at it, even if it's not true. "We are you and Dee, right?" I asked. She nodded. "I was wondering what you thought would happen if you got caught. Dee wasn't risking her marriage this time. The next stop is a little over a mile away. I'll give you half an hour to convince me not to take you to your parents." She wanted to say something, but I raised my hand. She just sat and looked out the window. We arrived at the parking lot. I parked and told her to find a quiet corner while I went to get some drinks. I walked up to the table with 2 cups of tea. She doesn't like tea, especially gas station tea. She took a sip and winced as she waited for the latte. She gave me a look that said, "Yes, I deserved it." She was silent until I said, "You have 27 minutes left." Time didn't really matter. Words mattered. I know I made a promise at the altar, and while I haven't broken it yet, I've come so close to it that it doesn't matter. I've lied to you, kept the truth from you, and disrespected our wedding vows. I don't know. If you believe me, I promise I'll never do this again. Let's just say I almost got burned once. I'll never see Dee again unless I get fired. It turns out she can think for herself when Dee isn't around to play devil's advocate. Shelley continued. "Dee convinced me it would be safe. You'll never know, you won't get hurt. It was only meant to be this one time. Like hers, I got caught up in planning and waiting. I've never had anyone but you and Dee convinced me that the risk is minimal if everything is planned correctly." Doubt started creeping in as soon as he picked me up from the bank on the way there. Harold was, how can I say, a high-energy driver, and then I thought, what if we get into an accident or something happens? We didn't think this through. It would have destroyed you. When Harold checked into the hotel, I looked in the mirror behind the reception desk. I thought about what you often said, "Do I like the person who looks back at me?" At that moment, I hated this man, and I decided not to follow through, to go home and tell you how stupid I was. Then the administrator looked at me and smiled. I realized that she knew that I was going to cheat on my husband. I already had doubts, but if she understood it, then you would see it too. Then all the excitement that the build-up disappeared, and pure fear filled me. And even if I stopped now, it might be too late to save our marriage. But I know you, if I did, it would be over forever. I decided to leave and pulled away from Harold. And then she said my real name and gave me the envelope. I guessed what was in it and realized that you knew everything from the very beginning. You must have told the administrator, although in fact, it doesn't matter how she found out. This was her look. I told Shelley how the receptionist explained to me how they recognized cheaters and that she and Harold followed the script exactly. I didn't even have to say anything. The administrator already understood everything. Did you have any idea what could happen if you were caught? Yes, I thought, but every time I brought it up, D just said that everything was safe. You won't find out anything, and it won't hurt you. I'm ashamed to admit, but I didn't even think about my parents and that. What will they think if I get caught? She said that this experience would be good for both of us. I could learn something new to please you. Now I understand that this is complete nonsense because you would wonder where I got it from. D planned it all, it worked for her, and I just followed her. But we thought of everything. No weird flirty clothes, no late nights. All late work delays were real, and we always warned you. I came home earlier with bachelorette parties or asked you to pick me up. We didn't want to give you any reason to worry. You see, this was your mistake. You diligently wore the same style of clothing, regardless of the weather or going out with friends, and this in itself was suspicious. Returning early from bachelorette parties is also not at all like you, and your excuse that you were bored didn't hold up. Asking me to pick you up from happy hour so I could brag to my coworkers about how much you loved me while hugging me. And the sex was amazing. Was it guilty sex? Partly yes, because of what I planned to do, but mostly because I love you and I enjoy being with you. Or was it a comparison to Harold? She looked at me questioningly. No, it never even occurred to me. I continued. I noticed all this and started to worry, so I started keeping an eye on you. Came earlier than planned to pick you up. You were perfect. You didn't make a single mistake until that signing party 2 weeks ago. You asked to pick me up at 10, I arrived at 9 and stood in the corner. Nobody noticed me. I watched you. You danced with Harold only once, and then, when he thought that no one was watching, he allowed himself too much. And you didn't stop him. It would have cost someone else a slap in the face. So I decided, if you let him do this, something is definitely planned. And when you came home last week and said you were going to the symposium, all the warning signs were in my head. My head rang like a Christmas garland. Even if I hadn't seen his touch, I would still have followed you, but this gave me a chance to take a photo. You were too perfect. You were never even a minute late, and that's not like you. You sometimes stay 5 or 10 minutes late when it doesn't matter. You always called long before the end of work if you were late, and I'm sure that you really were at work. You asked me to pick you up in the evening, although I usually didn't offer it myself, but now you almost insisted, and I didn't need to convince you to go out as usual. You are friends, she dressed inconspicuously, modestly, and not elegantly as usual. You even asked me to help you pack your things so I could see there was nothing sexy in there. You've never done that before. Did Dee have your sexy lingerie? No, there wasn't any. I only took the nightgown you saw. I usually sleep naked, you know that. But it didn't seem right with another man. She looked at her tea and said quietly, so we weren't as smart as we thought. Damn, I feel so stupid for taking Dee's advice. She looked at me and continued, you warned me so many times. What a fool I was. Tears rolled down her face, falling into the tea. She pulled herself together, took a sip of the now cooled tea and winced. I started to doubt that I could do this when that receptionist looked at me. She could understand that I was going to cheat on my husband, and if she saw it, you would definitely notice, and it would hurt you, and you would hurt me to quit. Then it dawned on me that this was wrong on every level. Darling, I will do whatever you say. I will sign a marriage contract with a lawyer and renounce everything. I'll do anything. I'd rather not do this, but if you insist, I'll even tell my parents and yours. If you forgive me, it will make me look bad, and you will look better. I wouldn't do that to old people, not her parents, not mine. Shelley continued. This is not an excuse. I can't even say that I didn't understand what I was doing. I knew perfectly well what I was thinking, about the things you'll never know, that it won't hurt you, but will be an experience for me. I like to plan, you know that, and I got carried away with the process without seeing where it would lead. And every time I had doubts, Dee found a reasonable explanation or excuse. I'm sorry, dear, I was wrong. The big question is, why? I asked. For the sake of experience. You would never know, and it wouldn't hurt you. Dee convinced me it would be safe and fun. I've never had anyone but you, and it was only meant to be this one time. Dee assured me that the risk was minimal if everything was planned correctly. She went through it herself and knew all the pitfalls. Now I think Dee was just enjoying getting away with it and wanted me to do the same, so she could accompany someone who cheated on her husband with Harold. Sorry, it's just a thought that came to my mind right now. And what were you going to do when you decided not to go through with it? I asked. I don't know. My first thought was to take a taxi and go to the symposium. I still had a number there, and I wouldn't have to tell you what a fool I was. But then I realized that this would only make the situation worse. A strange thought came to me. I was just hoping that you could leave work and come save me. I know that sounds like an excuse, especially after I received the letter and found out that you knew everything. But that's what was going through my head. Honey, I was so confused. I felt guilty. I'm still trying to sort out my thoughts. I was so stupid to let it get this far. Forgive me, dear. I thought about it a bit. I knew what I wanted to do, but what does she want? What do you want to do now? I asked. I want my husband to take me home so I can start making amends for him, to apologize for being a stupid fool, for not listening to his advice, for being stupid enough to think I could trick him. I've never disrespected him, but from his point of view, it will look that way. And finally, I have to start rebuilding trust. I know it won't be easy, and I don't know how to do it yet, but I can't do it if I'm not with him. Please, I beg you, I am ready to kneel now, but give me a chance to restore trust and correct my stupid mistake. She took a deep breath and continued. I need to get Dee out of my life, and I think I probably lost my job. I don't know what to do with this yet, but if you take me home, it will give me time to think. We got back into the Land Rover, and I headed south again. Shelley just sat in the corner and cried until I got to the next exit, where I turned around and headed north. She noticed. She turned sharply to me, looked, and said, Darling, thank you so much. You won't regret this. I promise with all my heart and soul. She continued to cry, but it seemed that this time they were tears of joy. We had been driving along the highway for about half an hour when Shelley asked, Can I ask you a question? I simply nodded. If you knew everything, why didn't you stop me? I believe that you are an independent woman and should make your own decisions. I warned you many times, but you chose to ignore my warnings. You know how I feel about cheating, so it had to be your choice. Luckily, you made the right choice in the end. But you hurt me, damaged our marriage and my trust in you. But if I didn't think our marriage could be saved, we'd still be heading south. From the other side of the car, I heard her sobbing. I knew it wouldn't be easy. But she realized her mistakes, and when you see your shortcomings, you understand how you can prevent future mistakes. When we returned home, it was late. All I wanted was to have a beer to let go of the day's worries, at least for a while. Shelley went to bed, and when I got up, I lay down next to her. She turned to me and hugged me. I was tired and fell into a deep sleep. Shelley got up early in the morning and brought me a cup of hot tea in bed. She was already dressed for work. I was still sleepy. She leaned over, kissed me on the lips, stroked my face, and said, Thank you, my dear. I love you. I had arranged a day off in advance, so I was just doing things around the house and garden. I didn't know when to expect Shelley home, but I received a text. I'll be home around 2. It was early for her. I wondered what happened. When she returned, she poured herself a large glass of red wine and brought me a beer. It was a little early, but she clearly needed it. She told me what she did when she came to work. Dee saw Shelley enter the office and head towards her manager's office. Dee turned pale. Shelley told her boss what happened and why she didn't go to Coventry. HR representatives were called into the office, and she repeated the same thing to them. She told me that she stood tall, held back tears, and just told me everything. She admitted to them that she had most likely lost her marriage and was ready to resign. She was sent home and told to wait for a call. She left the office and didn't even look at Dee. Shelley told me that she visited our lawyer and was able to make an appointment with a junior lawyer. By evening, she already had a draft marriage contract. She placed it in front of me. It said that if she had sex outside of our marriage, she would receive nothing. There were no restrictions on my account. Underneath the typed text, she handwritten, plus one free margin for error to compensate for my guilt. I added, sex 2 women and me. She added, but one of the women is me. She showed me the document, I nodded and moved it back to her. She signed my amendment. I took a pen and crossed out all the handwritten notes. She smiled at me. Taking a large sip of wine, she asked, will you help me? What should I tell Frank? He is not a friend, just an acquaintance, the husband of an ex-girlfriend. I don't know what to do. I said I thought we should tell Frank. But in the end, it was decided for us. Dee was fired the following Monday. She wasn't even allowed to work for a month, something to do with using bank funds to book love hotels. The incident with Harold and Shelley was not the first time she had booked rooms. She was fired on the spot. She lied to Frank about the reason. Someone denounced her and told him the truth. It turned out that her affair with Harold was not an isolated incident, but happened often. Frank, as promised, divorced Dee. She had no time to laugh now. She moved where we don't know and don't want to know. Harold also got divorced and lost almost everything because of the prenup. Then he had an accident, but it wasn't me. I later learned that Frank was on a golf weekend with good friends when it happened. As for us, we did it. Thanks to Shelley's self-confidence, she did not lose her job, but she was reprimanded. She tried very hard to restore trust in me. Now I believed in her more than she did, especially after Dee disappeared from her life. Nevertheless, I continued to take a closer look at her surroundings. Penny, the woman sitting next to me, was amazing, a true trophy wife, but behind that beauty was a sharp mind running several businesses. She said she was doing something in Parliament. I didn't see her on TV. I had little interest in national politics. I was limited to my local constituency, to those who could change something where I live. She looked different than I was used to seeing her. Her signature long, wavy blonde hair was pulled back into a ponytail. She was wearing a disguise. She reached across the table, took my hand, smiled her dazzling smile, which I had become accustomed to, and said, "Don't worry, Dave, it'll all be over soon." "I know, Penny, I know." Penny came to me a few weeks ago and told me that her private investigators, Mitchell and Butler, had unearthed information about her husband's antics and activities. Her husband works for a company that is taking over businesses, and over the past year, she's felt he's been using dishonest tactics to undercut deals that, if brought to light, would make her look bad. So she hired surveillance on him. She suspected that he had sexual relations with other women to obtain information, but there was no evidence. Detectives found his usual methods included offering employees higher wages and better prospects elsewhere, so that the victim would be forced to increase pay to retain people. He also provided anonymous tips to OSHA about alleged unsafe incidents, regardless of their veracity. This left the company vulnerable to takeover at a ridiculously low price. One of his tricks that he was particularly proud of involved someone opening the valves on a diesel fuel tank on the property and then another person crashing into the fuel spill trap. About 1,000 gallons of diesel leaked, contaminating the land, making it unsuitable for residential construction without costly cleanup. The land was sold at a huge loss. The company found itself in a financial crisis and was sold for pennies, resulting in the loss of about 70 jobs. Sitting there, Penny asked, "We know that his usual attempts with you did not work, so he switched to your wife. Your employees are very loyal to you. Tell me how you do it." "It's simple. I work side by side with them, listen to them, and share their problems with them. Well, beer helps from time to time." We looked at those dancing on the dance floor. Her arms were wrapped around his neck, her head rested on his shoulder, they just danced. The music was low, and the setting was dark and very private. The woman looked good, almost as good as the one sitting next to me. I told Penny, "Now." She nodded. We stood up, and she took 2 envelopes from the table. I walked towards them, Penny walking behind me. As I came closer, he noticed me. Recognition flashed across his face. Why would a single man cross the entire dance floor and head straight towards them? Luckily, the music wasn't too loud. When I approached, I said, "Darren, may I intervene?" My wife recognized my voice. She turned around sharply, horror showing on her face. It was at that moment that Penny, Darren's wife, appeared next to me with two envelopes in her hands. She let her hair down and was instantly recognizable. My wife fainted. I picked her up. I didn't want to get this beautiful dress dirty. Someone must have paid a fortune for it. Not me. "You tried my wife. I think I'll try yours if she agrees," I told him. Penny looked at me, smiled, and lightly slapped my arm. "We'll have to wait until we're both divorced, but I'm looking forward to it." This, of course, would never have happened, but the smile faded from his face. Penny reached out, took her husband's left hand, and raised it. "I see you don't have a wedding ring, but your companion still wears it. I wonder how long." My wife began to come to her senses. She looked at me and said, "Darling, it's not what you think. We were just dancing." Penny opened one of the envelopes and pulled out a photograph. "Oh, you may be dancing now, but I wouldn't call it dancing." She showed them a photo her detectives had taken last week in the office. They obviously didn't dance on it. Penny pulled out another photo and showed it to them. "The photo was taken last Wednesday at the golf club. It doesn't look like dancing either, but I understand your pleasure. He is very good. I hope you didn't go any further." Penny handed her husband the second envelope and said, "Darren, just sign the papers. There is a reminder about the prenuptial agreement and contact information for my lawyer." A crowd gathered around, phone cameras turned on. The music stopped, and he was humiliated by his own wife. He was furious, very furious. Fine. My crying wife was already standing on her own 2 feet. Penny and I turned around and headed out. I expected this. I felt a hand on my shoulder. He wasn't stupid enough to start a fight with me. Penny and I continued towards the door. There was complete silence in the hall. 2 bouncers tried to follow us, but Penny's bodyguards told them what not to do. We got to the exit. My wife was holding my hand. "Please, please don't leave me. I can explain everything. Please give me a chance." Nothing happened. We were in the lobby and saw Penny's pink Rolls-Royce parked at the entrance. The driver held the door open for her. My crying wife told me, "I didn't do anything wrong." My new friend leaned towards me and resumed her Scottish accent. "Oh, I did. You lied to your husband. You touched a man where only his wife, that is, me, can touch. You allowed my husband to touch you where only your husband should touch you. You wore dresses for him that you don't wear for your husband. You betrayed him and his company." This stunned my wife. You see, my wife was the company secretary and chief financial officer. She knew everything about my business. "Have you told my husband about Dave's new contract?" "Yes," my wife answered quietly. "Did you know that my husband works for a company that does acquisitions, and that for the last year or so I have suspected that he was using tactics that would reflect poorly on me?" "No, I didn't know. I hired surveillance for him. I suspect he used women to get information, but I had no proof. The prenuptial agreement he foolishly signed includes the words, 'touching another person's private parts or allowing another person to touch your private parts.'" I remember he and his lawyer laughed at this point. Now he doesn't laugh anymore. Phones in the hands of those present recorded her loud tirade against my wife. Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. Tomorrow it will be on all social networks. I didn't know he deceived me. Tears were still streaming down her face. Penny continued, "You just turned out to be another gullible woman. He collected information from you in order to offer lower rates on contracts and put your company out of business. Usually he worked through the company's employees, but it didn't work with yours. He tried and failed. Then he turned his attention to you, and you let him do it, stupid woman. Your husband's company was already preparing for a takeover as soon as he lost enough contracts. His success arouses envy and anger among his competitors. They believe that he thinks too much of himself, an upstart from the margins." My wife was completely devastated. You can take it with you. There's room in the car, Penny said as she left. I helped my wife into the rolls and had to fasten her seat belt. She was crying so hard she couldn't find the buckle. We stopped at the Hilton Hotel, and the doorman opened the door for my friend. She leaned forward and addressed her driver. Parker, she said, take Mr. Harris wherever he wants to go. Yes, my lady, he replied. Parker drove us home. I helped my wife into the house. She was still sobbing until we closed the door. Then she straightened up, wiped her eyes, turned around, and playfully slapped me on the arm. Oh, you cunning one, you could have told me that his wife would be there. I could apologize to her even more by pretending that I didn't know he was married. No, I wanted the shock on your face to be real when she appeared from behind me, like in the chandelier scene from Only Fools and Horses. Well, it worked damn well. I almost really fainted. Everything went better than I expected. It's a pity he managed to hit you. I'll have to kiss you in that place later. With these words, she hugged me and kissed me on the lips. I responded in kind, and she pulled away. By the way, whose idea was it her appearance with divorce papers? You could have thought of this. It's you. It was Penny. She knew how he would react, so she brought her security guards so the bouncers wouldn't interfere until I had finished my business with him. Good point. Well, I'll have to maintain the image of a disgraced wife in public for a few weeks, and then maybe we'll have a weekend to make up. I think the guys on the construction site know what's going on, and I'm still part of the business. Yes, I talked to them today to explain the situation. By the way, Harry was in the crowd at the hotel and wrote everything down. It was the guys who warned me what Darren was doing. The main thing is that they know I'm on their side and keep their mouths shut. They will. You might even get applause for your acting skills if Harry shows the video. She smiled and said, I'll challenge them if they do. Great. That's the plan then, at least in public until the noise dies down. Now, I think you should take your husband to the bedroom to compensate for touching another man that he wouldn't like, even if it was over his clothes. The next morning, I came downstairs exhausted. She wore me down making amends. I put the kettle on and checked my email. There was a letter from Lady Ward Creighton. Why is some lady texting me? I read the letter. Dave, I hope she made amends. Good acting, although I did worry a few times if we had gone too far when she fainted. Was this for real? I think I should explain myself. When I learned that you were the new target of my future ex-husband, the detectives found information about you and realized that you knew about his machinations and were preparing a plan to thwart his intentions. When they told me everything, they suggested letting it run its course to achieve my goals. But I'm not one of those who stay away, so I decided to help you. That's when I introduced you to Mitchell and Butler. They told you just enough to make you think your wife was going to cheat on you. This gave me the opportunity to intervene and help stop the alleged cheating. Sorry, I know it's bad of me. Of course, you knew everything. You planned it with her. Glad she didn't, by the way, otherwise she would have been disappointed. I could have told everything in roles, but you played the role so well and I enjoyed it, so I decided to continue. You both need to be on stage. Again, bad for me. Darren was jealous of my seat in the upper house of Parliament and believed that it should belong to him. The money that I gave him for charity, he gave partly to charitable foundations in his own name and partly to party needs. He began to buy himself a peerage. He is charismatic, charming, and good-looking. I loved and trusted him. It was my stupidity. This won't happen again. Divorce is not enough. He should be humiliated. I want to expose his fraud so that he loses his job, and if he's lucky, his company goes bankrupt. I have a place in my portfolio for such a company, but I want it to be run ethically. I know a great honest couple who could manage it if you're looking to change careers, or a couple of seats on the board of directors to oversee her work. The pay is good, and with your skills, you may be able to keep your jobs. Let me know, and I'll send Parker for you to discuss the details. Thank you for a fascinating evening. Sincerely, Penny. I showed the letter to my wife, and all she said was, "What a cow." She fooled us. Then she looked at me, smiled, and said, "Do you have her phone number? We don't have anything planned for the evening." Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. 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 Click to the next one.